I said I was going to show you an unpainted shelf when I spoke to you last week. I'm going to show you an unpainted shelf. Now, do you remember I did a video, it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, that both these shelves were full of all of my unpainted models to shame me into painting them so that I would then put them over that side. Since then, this top shelf, as you will have seen back after Christmas, was completely finished. My skeleton, my undead army, so that's cool. This shelf was looking a bit empty. I've put away all of my sci-fi 40k-ish figures that were on the shelf, partly because I'm not really that bothered about painting them, but partly because I want to get my fantasy stuff done this year, and then after everything fantasy-wise is finished, then I can pick up those and dabble with them as and when I wish. But I wanted to reward myself with one final army. I say final, obviously it's never final, but there's one army that I've really wanted to do for a long time, and I've been a bit intimidated by it because they're some of my favourite figures, but they're also really difficult figures to get hold of. And that's 4th edition Night Goblin army, just exclusively Night. I have got some other goblins in here, but I will explain that as I go through them. Night Goblin army, Kev Adams goblins, all metal. So although the plastic archers from the box set were theoretically Night Goblins because they had the hoods and things, I haven't got any of those in here. Everything is metal, apart from the things that aren't, and I'll talk about those later on. But they're difficult things to get hold of. But over the past year I've been sort of picking up a few lots here, there and everywhere, and I've now got quite a big hoard, which I'm going to try and set about painting over the course of the next year. And I don't know why I do this to myself, because I hate painting big units. I'd rather sit down with 12 figures in a warband and paint them than sit down with a big unit of 30 models and try and slog through those. And so of course I've chosen another army that's, goblins are so cheap, right, and they're really ineffective to field on the field in units of less than 30, so of course all of my units now have to be 30 strong, so I've given myself a hell of a year ahead, and I'm going to really regret it, I think, by 4 months in, and possibly even sooner than that. But I'm working on ways to try and make them quicker to paint without... I'd want to do them justice, right, because they're expensive figures to try and get hold of, they're difficult figures to find because a lot of people are using the plastic goblins and just buying the metal command groups to put with them. So there aren't that many Night Goblins out there. Yeah, they're hard to find, they're difficult, and they're really lovely models, and I don't want to rush through them. But I think if I can do the front couple of ranks to a really high level, I'm quite happy to have background ranks. They're not going to be on the table for that long, let's face it. So yeah, I want to find a system that works fairly well and fairly quickly. And I've got some ideas for how I want to paint these guys. For example, I want to give them light coloured cowls rather than the black cloaks that's sort of typical. I want to very green skins as opposed to my Orcs and Goblins army that are sort of Angus MacBride themed, and they're more sallow, sort of browny grey coloured. I want these to be proper green skins. I'm going to stop short of Goblin green bases, not that I have anything against Goblin green bases. Goblin green bases are great, but I do want these to fit in with the rest of my stuff, so they're going to have black edging on their bases. So yeah, you know what happens when you tell yourself that you're not going to start painting a project for some time. You put it on a shelf, but you don't just put it on a shelf. You put it on a shelf and you kind of add to it and add to it and add to it, and then you get all the figures together and you group them into units, and you think, oh, I could put some more in here. I'm missing some here, missing some here, missing some here. So I have been adding to this over the course of the year. So it's probably doubled in size with things that I've thought of over the years. So I'm going to try and put a line under that now and say this is done. All of my units are complete units with champions and standards and even numbers of models, so either 30s or 20s or 10s, something that works nicely in the decimal system. I'm going to try not to add to this anymore. So the core of my Night Goblin army is going to be 2 units of 30 strong spears. So I've got a unit of the monopose. Well, there are 2 variants, right, of the spear and the shield like this. So I've got a unit that's made up of a combination of those 2 with one of the sideways spear guys in the front rank as a champion, and then a musician. I have got some of the standards, but I've also converted some spearmen into standard bearers because it's just slightly cheaper possibly than picking up the standards, or I wanted a bit more variation in my standards, so that I have converted some of those, but I have actually got some real Night Goblin standards in amongst it. Then I've got 2 units of 30 warriors with hand weapons, one with hand weapons and shields and the other with just regular hand weapons, and in amongst those I have got some of the smaller regular goblin models. I've also got some of the models that Macrocosm used to sell. I don't know where they've gone now, but they were Kev Adams faces on sort of hoodie goblins, and so the faces are right, and they have got hoods, and they're about the right height. I actually chopped the lower legs off and shortened the lower legs to make them the same sort of height as the Night Goblins. So what I need to do now is go back and putty the bigger hoods on them. I really want I'm happy with like the spear units and the warrior units for there to be monopose units with a command group. I'm totally happy with that, and also with the bows. But I do want to do quite a lot of converting into this army to have interesting sort of focal points in the command groups and things. So one of those things I want to do is to put hoods on those former Macrocosm goblins to make them fit. I've got 3 units of 10 bowmen, 2 units of actually not 2 units of 10 and a unit of 15. No, that's wrong too. I've got see, I've lost count now. I've got 4 units of 10. That's right, 4 units of 10. 2 units of 10 of the citadel shooting, not the plastic ones, the metal bowmen with a commander that's doing the walking thing. 1 unit is Harlequin Kev Adams goblins. They're a bit bigger, and they've got the sort of Roman helmet crest over the top, and I actually picked these up as a job lot on eBay, 10 of them in the same pose. It was really cheap, nobody seemed to want them, so I'm going to get rid of the crests and again put hoods on them, and maybe they've got chainmail, so I'll maybe sculpt out some of the chainmail into robes. And then I mentioned last week that I got an order through from Blacktree Design, and that's from these Night Goblin, or Nightling, Kev Adams Nightling Goblin archers mostly, although I picked up some of the other models. The Kev Adams ones, they've got some other ones that are not quite very Kev Adamsy in the faces, so I haven't gone for those. I picked up some others to go into other units. But these ones are great, but they're also a bit bigger. Kev has a tendency now to sculpt everything a lot bigger, which is why they don't necessarily fit in with the Night Goblins. But they fit with the Harlequin ones, and so I think that aesthetically they won't look too bad as long as they're in different units. If I don't mix them in with the original Night Goblins, the height difference won't look too bad, and it will kind of blend the units together. I've got another smaller unit of spears here that's mostly the Macrocosm models, with some older not Night Goblin goblins in, because they're sort of similar size again, and they've got the right armaments on. Try and blend it up so you don't really notice the variation across the goblins. And I've got a unit of armoured goblins with 2-handed weapons, and these are the Night Goblin boss. For some reason the Night Goblin boss with the really pointy helmet and the plate armour seems to be quite a common figure to pick up, so I've managed to pick up quite a lot of those, and they also fit with the Kev Adams Heartbreaker models that Ralph Arthur Europe do. They do some that are also in plate armour with kind of halberdy type weapons. So I did a unit of those, but they're going to have to count as common goblins rather than night goblins in my army, because although they are night goblins, giving them heavy armour and halberds is not an option for night goblins, but you can do it for common goblins, so they're going to have to be a common goblin unit. To go in all of my night goblin units, of course I've got Fanatics, so you can have 3 goblin Fanatics in a unit of night goblins, not of common goblins sadly. So I've got 24 night goblin Fanatics. Some of them, most of them are the Kev Adams 4th edition goblin Fanatics. There are some of the earlier ones, and I want to give a big thank you to, and some of the even earlier ones, I want to give a big thank you to Russ Painting for supplying me with the Gruck the Loon combat cards model. That's the final model that I wanted for this. I have got him in my Goblinoids set, and I've also got the one sort of hanging off his hammer, or his ball and chain, that I painted for the Golden Gobbo competition years and years and years back. And I didn't want to repaint either of those models, but I did want to include them in some way, so I've got duplicates of both of those models. So 24 Night Goblin Fanatics to paint up, ace. I picked up a Foundry bolt thrower because I like the idea that goblins are sort of into tinkering with machines that mean that they don't have to get too close to their enemy. So I picked up a Foundry bolt thrower. You can't really have it in a Night Goblin army. For some reason, all the war machines in 4th edition became assigned to orcs rather than goblins. So you're supposed to have a unit of orcs in the army to field it, but I'm going to tweak that because I don't really understand why the orcs should get bolt throwers and not the goblins. I think the goblins should have stolen the equipment and appropriated. So I got one of those, and I also picked up the Nightmare Miniatures bolt thrower. I got a few more figures from Nightmare Miniatures when I ordered them, just to make the postage worthwhile. They're Kev Adams sculpts again, but they're quite big again. Kev, I guess maybe it's an eyesight thing, you get older and you can't see so well, so you start sculpting things bigger. It doesn't seem to be sculpting small goblins anymore, so there is a real difficulty getting contemporary, modern, small night goblins, but never mind. So I've put a couple of those in the army as just as big, like leader figures or hiding in the middle of a unit, but not many of them at all, because they don't really fit. Then I've got Doom Divers. I really wanted to have one of each design, and then I managed to pick up 2 of each design, and then I found another one really cheaply, so I've got 5 Doom Divers now. You're supposed to have a unit of common goblins to field them, which I have got. But in my head, they're definitely, Batwing Loonies, they're definitely Night Goblin Doom Divers. And I think even in the Orcs and Goblins army book, there's a photograph of one which is labelled as a Night Goblin Doom Diver. So maybe they changed what they were going to be slightly later on and realised that the Night Goblins were getting all the good stuff and wanted to give some good stuff to the Common Goblins instead. So yeah, I've got my Doom Divers and I've converted those so that you've got one of each in the regular as they compose, and then there's a flying one, and then there's one being cranked back by another Fanatic heaving on the chain. Because again, the Goblin Fanatics, 4th edition Goblin Fanatics seem really common. There's loads of them around and they're quite cheap to pick up, so I'm also going to use those as the crew for my war machines because they look like they're pulling on things and heaving on things, and it's so common to find them with the ball snapped off anyway. And then I've got some Spider Riders. They're supposed to be Forest Goblin Spider Riders again, but I decided to use Night Goblin Spider Riders because they're cave spiders. These are Mark Copperston spiders from North Star, and I've actually cheated slightly because, as I say, it's quite rare and hard and expensive to pick up the metal Night Goblin Spearmen. I've actually cast some in resin so that I don't feel bad chopping them up to mount them on the spiders. It's just so that I feel happy, chopping them around and carving them around to fit them on the spiders. I didn't want to do that to original metal ones, and it's a bit hard to do with original metal ones. I've got loads of Night Goblin Shamans in this army, and you'll see them when they get painted, but loads of them. Wanted lots of madcap magic. Part of the idea with this army is that I wanted to be crazy madcap. You never know quite what it's going to do, and crazy madcap magic goes alongside with that. But one thing that I did want to mention is the Satanic Panic version of the old Citadel wizard in his throne. I decided that their reiteration of him looks quite goblin-y, so I've converted him into a goblin on a palanquin, and I'm going to use squig herders with the poles above their shoulders to carry him into battle. Subject to squig herders, I've got a lot of squigs and squig herders because madcap, and also squig hoppers, plenty of those. Another goblin shaman that I've converted onto a Raffen war tortoise, like I've got for my halflings. Thought that looked suitable, and I think that's going to count as a hydra because he's got a few other goblins that were stood on the back. I figured that counts as sort of multi-headed on the top of a slow-moving, hard-to-kill object. So hydra was the best thing that I could find to count that as. Got some stone trolls because, of course, stone trolls and night goblins in my head go together really well, and they really need something that's just going to stand still in the middle of the army and take everything that gets thrown at it. But they're going to be stupid, probably. So again, another unpredictable element. So they can't blame me if the army doesn't work. It's not my fault. It's not bad leadership. It's just the unpredictable nature of night goblins, which I like. I like that. Not ever knowing what's going to happen. Got a wolf chariot. That's also a harlequin model. And the last thing that I got for this army is I picked up Skarsnik and Gobbler. Gobbler, I've seen somebody did on Instagram, I think on Facebook as well, did a amazing squig hopper champion conversion on Gobbler, so I wanted to have a go at one of those. But it gives me a spare Skarsnik, and I thought I want to mount Skarsnik on a war wyvern to be my unit leader, not as Skarsnik. I'll call him something else and I'll do some conversion work on him, but I managed to pick up a version of the Tony Ackland war wyvern, not too expensively, on eBay because he's missing his horns, so I'll have to putty those in. But actually they're the same horns as are missing from my Nick Biddy Balrog. I didn't realise that they were the same horns, but they are. So if I can find somebody who can donate me a pair of those horns, I can take some silicon moulds from them, cast horns for both of them in one go, so that'd be good. So yes, I'm gonna convert Skarsnik to be riding him. I think he'll make a really nice centerpiece for the army. So, as I hope you can tell, I'm quite excited to get going on this. I maybe won't be after I've done a couple of months of painting bulk units of goblins, but I've been planning it for a long time and I'm really keen to get going. So, starting August or September, don't know which, look out for lots and lots of night goblins coming up on the channel and on my blog and social media. So I hope you're excited about that as I am. Do like the channel, do subscribe to the channel, do hit notifications, and then you'll find out when progress is being made. In the meantime, take care, and I shall see you next week.